This morning I had coffee with a great guy. I had such a good time. He asked me so many questions about my life. He was very interested in me, at least that's how I felt. It felt like catching up with an old friend. We had lots in common, and while we were having coffee together, I discovered that we had even more things in common than what I previously thought. We had tons of shared life experience, very similar goals for the future, and I felt completely comfortable while I was having coffee with him. It was a really lovely experience. So I want to share with you exactly how you can replicate this experience in your own life, in your own city, without putting in much effort at all. This guy actually found me, and how you can consistently meet husband material men, have really fun coffee dates week after week until you find your prince charming. Step number one begins long before you meet a guy or even start talking to someone, and I'm referring to your ideal partner profile, your IPP. My students in the Perfect program know that I am relentless about having an IPP that is crystal clear and very specific to you. So I am a business owner. I have been self-employed for the last 9 years, no, I think last 10 years at this point. So it's very much an ingrained part of my identity. I don't think I'll ever have another job unless I one day do a TV show, and then maybe that you can be considered a job. But I'm out of being an employee of any sort. In fact, now I have my own employees. So I tend to attract a lot of people who are business owners, and one of the crowning factors of my IPP is to also meet other business owners. And this guy who I met was also a business owner, of course. Number two, probably one of the most underrated aspects of achieving your goals is to block your calendar ahead of time. I do this with my fitness, I do this with my sleep, I do it with work, and I definitely do it for bringing the right people into my life. So I had blocked slots on my calendar every single day long before I got in touch with this guy. I told myself, okay, I've got a slot right after I go to the gym in the morning and before I start my work day. I have about a 1 hour slot that I'm willing to give to someone who I think could be worth my time. And so when he reached out to me, I just slotted him into that slot. It wasn't like we had to coordinate and say, where are we going to meet, how are we going to meet, when are we going to meet, when's convenient for you, blah, blah, blah. There was no coordination. There was just, this is the slot I have available this week. Would you like to fill it? And all he had to do was say yes. This is what you want to do with all husband material men. Make it as simple as possible for them to say yes to you. Step number three, which we also teach in the Perfect Match program, is to have the kind of experience you want to have with that person planned out ahead of time. So I'm a morning person. The classic thing to do is to meet someone after work for drinks. But after work, my brain is fried. I just want to go home, get into bed with a good novel and zone out. I do not want to be talking to a stranger. Instead, when am I freshest? Pretty much right after I go to the gym in the morning. I'm floating on a cloud of endorphins. I'm fresh. I have lots of energy left for my workday. And best of all, I'm in such a positive, happy, and relaxed mood that I can pretty much enjoy anyone's company. So this is when I meet people, number one. And secondly, the thing that I like to do in the morning is enjoy a slow coffee. I very rarely get the opportunity to do this. Usually I gulp down my coffee in 2 minutes and then run off to my office. But if I had the chance to do that with a husband material man, all the better. When you have these three elements sorted, the kind of dates you have, who you go on dates with, what you talk about on those dates almost becomes irrelevant because you have laid the foundation to have a good time regardless of who you're going on a date with. But I'm going to share with you exactly how I ensure that my conversation during these dates is really fun and interesting and I feel loved and cherished and appreciated. I do want to reiterate that you need to have these three elements long before you even start talking to a guy. Without these three elements I've just shared with you, there are very low chances that any date is going to be good simply because the planning phase is missing. So coming back to our actual conversation. Now, most people are trying to go on dates with guys who are attractive. They are basing 100% of their decisions around whom they spend time with based on how the guy looks. I literally didn't know how this guy looks. We met on Instagram and WhatsApp. He sent me a message because I was looking for a photographer. He's a photographer. He reached out. I looked him up on LinkedIn. None of his photos were clear. I had no clue what he looked like. And when we met in the coffee shop, I didn't even know who to look for because I had no clue what he looked like. He recognized me. So I was literally going to meet someone who I had no clue what they looked like. I didn't know if he was attractive or really ugly or had a big frown on his face. I had no idea. But here's what I did know, that we shared the same lifestyle, values, and mindset. And I'm going to share exactly how I knew that. The key here is that attraction is a very poor basis for compatibility, for emotional connection, and most of the time I find that the most attractive guys I meet are just not very nice people to be around. So this guy and I share one really incredible thing in common, which is that we have shared life experience in the same 3 countries. I have spent a third of my life in India, a third of my life in the United States, and a third of my life in Europe, and mainly in France. These 3 places have had a huge influence on me, but I almost never meet someone who shares all 3 of these countries in common until I met this guy. He also has lived in France, also has lived in the United States, also has lived in India, and speaks languages from all of the 3 countries, has a life experience in these 3 countries, friends, family, deep relationships. So I knew before I even sat down with him that we would have tons of things to talk about, even if we just talked about the past. However, because he's also a business owner, I knew we'd have tons of things to talk about in the future, because most business owners have very similar goals: make more money, get better clients, and have more freedom. So I knew we shared the same lifestyle, values, and mindset. To a great first date is to go out with someone who you are interested in, who you genuinely want to get to know. I was very pleasantly surprised to discover that this guy seemed to want to get to know me. He asked me so many questions, I barely had time to ask him questions about himself. I was like, oh my God, I can't even catch my breath. He's asked me so many questions about myself. So that was very flattering. But even if he'd asked me 0 questions about myself, I would have thoroughly enjoyed myself asking him questions about his life experience, what he thinks, what his plans for the future are, how he sees his life, where he feels most comfortable. I didn't ask him, do you want to get married? Do you want to have children? When do you want to settle down? What are your plans for, baby, marriage, house? Those kinds of questions are isolating, and they're very typical questions that emotionally immature parents might be asking you. Instead, I want to get to know this guy's values, what's important to him, what lights him up. And so I asked him about his business, I asked him about what countries he wants to live in, and most importantly, I asked him questions that would help me understand where he feels. The goal of a first date is not to find out if this guy is your future husband. We women tend to go into all first interactions with a guy thinking, can I marry him? Do we have emotional connection? Does he want what I want? Can he give me 2.5 kids? You're probably going to be disappointed if you go in with these expectations. Instead, the goal of a first date is to find out if you feel comfortable in his presence, if you feel safe around him, if you want to spend more time with him. And as I was talking to this guy, I discovered that he also plays tennis. He also does yoga just like me. He also loves traveling. He also has friends who live in many different countries like me. He also has family here in Mumbai. He also loves the energy of the city of Mumbai where we met. He also is curious about the world. He also wants to grow his business. It showed me that we share so much in common that I would want to spend more time interacting with him. Not because I have any plans to marry him, but because I enjoyed his company and want more of it in my life. I teach you exactly how to have extremely enjoyable first dates inside the Perfect Match program. It's my signature 6-month matchmaking and coaching program where you learn exactly how to find a man who you can marry pretty much with your eyes closed and have a really good life with him just by having these 15-minute conversations. Now, this guy and I had coffee for over an hour and then we said goodbye. I don't know if or when I'll see him again, but I know that I would really enjoy myself if and when I do. This is how you want to approach first dates, and this is the approach that we teach inside the Perfect Match program, which does 2 things. Number 1, it releases you from feeling desperate. Because you are meeting lots of different guys who match your ideal partner profile, you feel abundant, you don't feel any desperation, and that makes the men want to get to know you better. And secondly, you have so many data points from meeting so many lovely men that when you do meet your husband, it's extremely obvious and you can say a very